Greetings, citizens of Nerdtropolis. Sean Todd here, the mayor of Nerdtropolis, and on this episode of Real Insights, my guest is Mark Dindal, the director of the Garfield movie. Hello, Mark.
Hey, hi, how are you?
I'm doing great. It's a real pleasure to meet you, and I just wanted to thank you for all the animated films you helped bring to life. I mean, there's a lot of them.
Well, thank you.
Of course. And I'm so happy that Garfield is back. He's such an iconic character we can all relate to. Do you remember the first time you were introduced to Garfield?
The first time for me would be the first television special. Because when Garfield came out on the comic strip, I was at college, California Institute of the Arts, studying animation. And at that time, before the internet, nobody was getting the newspaper. Nobody had a phone. No one really had a television in the dorms. There was the community, television kind of in the common area. And but animated specials were pretty rare and an exciting thing for all of us, because I was at the School of Animation at Cal Arts. So anytime there was something like that, it was a big event for all of us. So I think we just all gathered around the television and watched it. So that was the first time I got exposed to it, because like I said, I wasn't getting the newspaper at that time. So then I discovered the comic strips a little bit in reverse order. So like I said, seeing the television special, animated television special, ever since I was a kid, it was just such an exciting thing. And here's this new thing, kind of really new to me, because I hadn't seen it in the newspaper as much. Just being at school working on stuff, you're a little bit isolated at that time. Hard to imagine now with everything that you can get access to immediately at your fingertips.
Yeah, I think if I recall, I would just ask my parents for the comic section of the newspaper and just go straight to that.
Yeah.
And then obviously the animated show and stuff like that. So I grew up obviously loving Garfield. I have I think I have like a Garfield CD. I forget what songs are on the track, but from the 90s. But I love all the merch being created for this film. Kind of like this popcorn bucket right here.
That's great.
All the parody posters I've seen on social media from all the creators and others that have been genius. Have you seen most of them? Like all those parody posters? They're brilliant.
Yeah. It's really fun.
It's only Garfield can only be the only one that gets away with it, to be honest. No one else can.
Yeah, it's just funny when every time you kind of plop him into something, it makes you laugh just immediately.
The Furios is probably my favorite one. I mean, that's the most iconic one to me. So yeah, we have the hardest working man in Hollywood with Chris Pratt voicing Garfield. I mean, I loved this film. I was so excited when I saw it. I was like, so great. When did the idea come about to choose Chris Pratt? I mean, it's a genius choice actually, because after watching, I'm like, yep, that is Chris Pratt.
Yeah. It started with us cutting a soundbite of his to the drawings that we had from the storyboards, and it was a soundbite where he was on a talk show talking about his love of food or snacking or something. So it was really appropriate. And when we put that to the sound to the images, we all felt, oh, that's it. It's so natural. And then I got a chance to speak with him on the phone and tell him more about the character and about how there was going to be a vulnerability in Garfield that we're going to reveal in his relationship with his dad. And he was just very excited to do it. So, we got to sign him on, and in the first recording session, it was a joy. He ad-libs and improvises so many options for you, always does the lines as written, but then can riff on them in a way to improve them and make them more his own and make them feel a little more Garfield, and also make him of today. So it was everything I hoped for and more.
Yeah, and you speak of that vulnerability, which I experienced. And how dare you make Garfield make us feel our heart explode a little bit, especially when it comes to his dad, Vic. I mean, I felt all those moments. So how excited was Samuel L. Jackson to come on board the Garfield train?
Oh, that was, I mean, it it was kind of surreal. I was like, Samuel Jackson? Samuel Jackson. It's not like, is there another Samuel Jackson? and he just, and to watch him work, you give him a context, and then he just nails it. But I mean, he's a pro. All of these people, he has so many films and experiences under his belt, understands characters and their emotional sides, and can just bring that to the performance effortlessly. And he too would, I encouraged him, make it your own. This is the character, but if we've written it in a way and you feel like that's not the way I think it would be said, please, make it your own, which he did, and elevated the material. Absolutely.
Yeah, all his moments are really fantastic, and they're really great. So I'm glad you got him on board. But okay, so I'm blown away by Nicholas Hoult as John. I just couldn't believe it, especially after watching the film. I mean, how on earth did this happen? Because I had no clue he had this type of voice performance in him. Definitely embodied the John I remember. And it's Nicholas Hoult. I'm like, that can't be the same person.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there another Nicholas Hoult? You keep thinking, yeah, that was, you meet him and he's just absolutely charming. And then you're talking about the character, and I mean, his American accent is flawless. And again, that just the ability to understand the character and get that sort of vulnerability, and that you can really empathize with and really love, and can see why, how lucky Garfield is, and you can understand why Vic would see this relationship and go, he's better off with him than out on the street with me. A lot of that comes through how the actor portrays the character, and I thought Nicholas just did such a wonderful job. This movie is focused on Garfield and Vic primarily, but John's such an important part. So in the scenes that he was in, that feeling's got to come through. And I thought Nicholas did a wonderful job.
Yeah, I obviously love Garfield and Vic, but I wanted more of John because he nailed it. I mean, it was just incredible. Just drawn to that performance. So definitely for the next one, a lot more John from Nicholas Hoult. So impressed. And definitely about Odie. Everyone loves Odie. I mean, every character in this, new and old, I mean, is fantastic. And, this time around, Garfield's adventure is mostly outdoors. How did you balance the humor and heart of this high stakes heist I can't even say it. High stakes heist storyline?
Well, you just, we do get to do several iterations of the movie, and so and get to preview it in an early form with audiences. So it's trial and error, really. There were some where there was too much of one element and not enough of the other, and so it really is trial and error. That's the thing that I think we're fortunate to have in animation, where we don't have to just go shoot it and the set is struck, and you can do reshoots, but can be expensive. We just work and rework it over and over again to get the right a balance of those things. And so it just evolves over time. You start with the script, but until you board it and put it on our story reel form and then get the actors, it's never completely finished being written.
What are some of your favorite moments or scenes from the movie?
Well, for in terms of the emotion, the scene where Vic reveals what really happened that night. And also when Garfield discovers that the notches in the tree weren't a made-up story. For humor, again, when they're tied around the tree and they're fighting each other with the vines. I loved Jinx's introduction. Hannah Waddingham was so game to just be so broad and comic with this character. But again, it's just something all of them do, and she certainly did in their performance. There's just a level of empathy there that you kind of can understand. So I don't know, each sequence we work and rework so many times, it's kind of like a bit of a puzzle, or a Rubik's cube. So when you finally solve it and feel good about it, it's really a joy. I mean, that's the fun thing. It takes a long time to do, but can be rewarding when you feel like, oh, that, I like the way that came together.
No, it was great. Can you talk about you and your team's design of the movie's look and feel? I mean, it's 2024, but like what I was watching, I felt like y'all just took what I remember and just updated to modern times, and it's brilliant.
Well, we definitely use the comic strips as our foundation, and the specials to a certain degree as well. But in the comic strips, there's a lot of iconic expressions, like the one where Garfield throws his head back. You see his nose, big wide mouth. You don't see his eyes or ears. That's a very iconic expression that Garfield has that we wanted to get, and it was a challenge in CG because you have to especially do a special sculpt of the model in order for it to do that. CG, because it is a tangible, I mean, it's in the computer, but it's actually a real thing. You can't fake things as you could if you were just drawing it. You can just draw whatever, and you're not, you don't have to take into account all that geometry. So DNEG really stepped up to the challenge and was able to figure out how to do those things. At a certain point, it's too hard for me to understand. I can just I know it takes a lot of work, and I can really appreciate what they did. But the comic strip was a big influence. Pete Oswald, our production designer, and Jeannie Chang, our art director, really studied those things and the essence of those things. And then the other thing for the CG, when I was a kid, there were these. I don't know if it's still around, but it was called a ViewMaster. Are you familiar with those? Yeah, and that was always magical to me, especially when they would have, sometimes they would have an animation that they would actually build and sculpt kind of in 3 dimensions. But when I would look at those as a kid, I always felt like I wanted to step into that world. It was a heightened reality, but it felt real, but more just had more charm than the real world. And so I showed them some of those classic ones that I grew up on, and it was a combination of things that were actually sculpted and matte paintings, and sometimes they'll use in those they would use, rather than real grass or dirt, they might use something like spices, that they would put down, and it was textural, but kind of a stylized sort of choice. So all of that came into play too, where Pete and Jeannie and the art team and everyone at DNEG embraced the idea of giving it dimension, but also adding a painterly element as well.
Yeah, I love the way you brought Garfield's world to life. You worked on a variety of animated films throughout your career. What keeps you passionate about animation, and how do you stay inspired?
It's funny because there's always a point where I think we're making this a movie a frame at a time. Whoever thought that would be a good idea? That seems insane. Seems like the stuff it would give you a nightmare as a kid. but for me, even now, I've never lost the joy of seeing something realized, whether it's a rough drawing of a character, or the first time you see a painting, and it can be a small little thumbnail painting with the color of an environment. When you see the animation for the first time, I think there's something. I just remember back, when I'd make the flip books, and you do the little drawings, and the first time you flip it and it comes to life, and it might just be a bouncing ball or something very crude, but you just created this thing, this life that didn't exist moments ago. And so there's something about that I haven't overanalyzed, but I just really has always been fascinated by, and the fact that you can just sketch out something that doesn't exist and now it seems real. Like, oh, there's a real character, and there's something out of your imagination, a combination of things. So that's what I think keeps me inspired. And what I love about animation is the ability to try and make something that's not really plausible. You make it feel like it could be real.
No, I love that. Lastly, I have to ask you, do we have to wait long before we get more Garfield? Because I'm just hungry for more after this film.
Well, I hope not. It I don't think we'll have another pandemic, and that did delay. So fingers crossed, knock on wood. Yeah, I would hope not. I hope it could roll into the next one a little quicker.
Thank you so much, Mark, for bringing Garfield back. Looking forward to more. And until next time, I really appreciate it.
All right, thank you so much. Nice to meet you and speak with you, Sean.
Once again, this is Sean Taj, the mayor of Nerdtropolis, and stay tuned for more movie news, reviews, interviews, and trailers.